Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show that talks about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I hope you'll join me as I chat to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. You may also wish to join the conversation over in the Let's Talk Near Death online community, which is found at www.letstalkneardeath.com. Membership is free, or you're welcome to upgrade to join the live VIP events, to gain early access to episodes, or to receive extra VIP bonus material. Your support helps me to continue to get episodes out and to help grow the conversation around these types of experiences. But before then, let's talk near death.
And I was so surprised because my bathroom was just lit up and there was just these glowing, huge beings. And I remember looking back at my body and thinking, oh my gosh, look at her. So I went quickly and easily out and up through the ceiling of the hospital room. And the minute I popped through that, I'm outdoors.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Today I'm chatting with Wendy Rose Williams. Wendy is a two-time near-death experiencer who shares how she had an angelic experience when her aorta erupted in 1997. This event changed everything from then onwards and led her into many paths of research and learning. Today, Wendy is a hypnotherapist specialising in past life regression. She's a Reiki master energy healer, a certified spiritual teacher, and an ordained minister. Wendy is also the author of two books, Regression Healing 1 and The Flow 1. So Wendy, welcome to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. I want to get the name of the show right. It is wonderful to have you here, so thank you for joining me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Thank you. I know we've already chatted a little bit before pushing the record button on the actual show. We've got a lot of things which we have an interest, a lot of topics which are in common. I'm excited to get chatting, but take us back to 1997. What happened for you to have this experience?
Well, what happened was I was pregnant. I was 10 weeks pregnant, and we were just thrilled to be expecting our second child because there had been years of infertility, and I'd also had two ectopic pregnancies. So it just really was a thrill. And I had been to the OBGYN physician just one time, but I kept calling them because I just didn't feel right. And I was having all this heartburn, which seemed odd to me because it was so early in the pregnancy. And they're like, well, it's fine to take my Lanta. So, just do that and we'll see you at your next visit. And the other thing that was odd that was going on was I kept having this very disturbing dream almost every night. And I didn't usually remember my dreams. And I didn't know at the time that there was a concept of precognitive dreams that could be a preview of something that might be coming up. I just didn't know that concept. And what would happen in the dream again and again, it was this very violent storm at sea. And I would see this ship. And it was just all this ripping and tearing, like the mast would tear out and the winches would come off the boat before it broke into pieces and went down. And I would wake up and think, oh my goodness, gosh, what a lot of pregnancy hormones must be going on. Because this is just odd to be having this dream again and again, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then what occurred was I was working at home. I was working full time, but from a home office, and I couldn't get comfortable. So my husband's off at work. Our nanny is at the park with our toddler. My older daughter was about 18 months old, and I just can't get comfortable. So I keep going into the bathroom because I think I'm going to be sick. I keep trying to lie down on the bed. I keep trying to, work. And it's like, what is wrong? And so I'm in the bathroom, and all of a sudden I just get this searing pain in my abdomen, and I felt something burst. And
Wow.
I literally looked down at my stomach because I'm like, I know this is crazy, but someone obviously just stabbed me in the knife, in the stomach with a knife. It's the only way I can describe this pain. And I passed out on the floor. And I had never passed out before. Luckily, I didn't hurt myself when I fell. I think I was, kind of kneeling toward the toilet, so it wasn't that far to go down. And I woke up because I could hear my name being called just really urgently. And I kept hearing, Wendy, Wendy, Wendy. So I came back to consciousness, and I'm laying in a fetal position on the floor. And I was so surprised because my bathroom was just lit up. And there was just these glowing, huge beings, these beings of light, angels, is just the best way I could describe it. And I was just astonished because I just really wasn't expecting anything like that to ever happen. And I didn't really know that I would have believed it until I experienced it. And one of the angels said to me, you need to call for help now, or you are going home. And it just was a really specific message. I knew exactly what he meant was call and get help, or you're going to die. And I responded to him, I can't walk. And he said, all you need to do is just be willing to get on your hands and knees, and we will help you. So I managed to do that, still just like clutching my abdomen. And I only had to go a little bit. I didn't have far to go at all because the master bedroom's right there next. I'm in the master bath, and the phone's right there on the nightstand. But it was this sense of being lifted. The minute I got on my hands and knees, it was kind of like, it sounds so crazy. It's like I flew gently in there. And I picked up the phone, and my immediate thought was, well, the angel said call for help. So who should I call? I never even thought to call 911. Doesn't even enter my mind because I'd never called it. And I called my husband at work because I knew he worked wonderfully close to home. He's literally 5 minutes from home, and I have no car because he's got one car and our nanny's got the other car. So I called him, and the miracles continue. I don't think I ever reached my husband at work. And I got him on the phone. Immediately, I told him, I need you to drive me to the hospital now. And he didn't even bug me with, what's going on? Are you sure? He's like, I'll be right home. And that gave me just enough time to call the OB office. And they said, okay, what we do need you to do is get here as quickly as possible and do not walk. We do not want you walking. So when you get here, tell your husband not to park. And just let us know when you're here at the hospital. Fortunately, their office was adjoining the hospital. And they said, let us know when you're here, and we'll come down and meet you with a wheelchair. So they did that. So I'm at the hospital within 15 minutes, fortunately, via my husband coming and getting me. And they take me up to the doctor's office, go straight into an ultrasound room. And I couldn't even get on the ultrasound. I couldn't even get on the exam table out of the wheelchair. My husband and the tech had to really help me because I'm just like so doubled over because I'm in so much pain. And the ultrasonographer starts to, take a look and check what's going on with my abdomen. And I could see the screen, and I thought it was very odd because I couldn't visualize anything. And I kind of looked at her and I said, is your machine working? Have you started yet? And she said, yes, I'll be right back. And I thought, okay, something's really wrong because she's got her game face on. Don't panic in front of the patient.
Yeah, exactly.
Be reassuring. But she's like, I'm going to go get the doctor. And what I noticed too was my abdomen was just distending and just getting bigger and bigger, which I thought was very odd. I'm only 10 weeks pregnant. I don't look pregnant. I don't have any little belly yet. And it's like, why is my stomach getting bigger? And she came right back with an OBGYN physician and with a nurse midwife. And the physician took one look at the screen, and they agreed that they couldn't visualize anything because there was just blood everywhere. So that's why they couldn't see any of the organs. And here I am asking her, is the machine on yet? because
Yeah,
I
wow.
just couldn't understand it, because before I'd always been able to see things when they were doing an ultrasound. So the doctor says, okay, we need to get you up on the floors right away. We need to admit you. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So they went and got a stretcher. They didn't even want me sitting in the wheelchair, and went and grabbed a stretcher and took me to the floors, and I was admitted onto the floors. So we know I've got a major bleed, but we don't know from where. And of course, I'm pregnant. So, this is complicating everything. And they've got to start transfusions, clearly. And they then had trouble getting blood for me because I'm A negative. I mean, it's not that rare, but evidently there had been a major train accident in our area a day or two before. And it was summer, it was August. Blood supply tends to be just lower because the students aren't around donating, because evidently students are just wonderful source of blood donations, just
Mm,
healthy college students.
mm.
So I'm not sure when they actually were able to hang the blood, but I'm just in the bed, and it's like, okay, you can't get up even to use the bathroom. We need you to just lie still, and let's see if we can get this to resolve on its own. Because, I mean, the body is a miracle, and sometimes just, incredible things can heal on their own if there was some sort of temporary bleed, because they don't know what it is, because they just couldn't see anything. So we don't know, my appendix burst. We have no idea. And what it turned out to be, and it wasn't diagnosed until they actually did surgery a few days later, was the uterus has something called the fundus at the top of it, and that's an aorta. And that's what had burst. So that's what I felt rip and tear. And I was correct that, an organ had burst. And it really tied back into that dream, because that ripping and tearing. And it's kind of symbolic too, because my ship was going to go down.
Yeah.
So that was round one. And then there was another NDE a few days later. So I'll stop at that point. Is that clear? Is that making sense?
Yeah, that is absolutely wonderful. Actually, you've got a really great clarity, Wendy, as you're taking it through. I was absolutely engaged following the story. All I just kept thinking was this must have been terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Well, it was, because we don't know what's going on. We're having trouble getting blood. We don't know why I'm bleeding. And I just keep thinking, I'm pregnant. I just need this baby to be okay.
Yeah.
Was, so much a focus for me, because it really heightened the stakes in so many ways. So I did not want to have surgery, because the OBGYN is, okay, we need to do surgery on. I'm like, what are you doing surgery for? What are you doing surgery on? And of course, the poor man, he can't answer that, because they
Yeah.
just aren't able to visualize. So he's like, okay, we'll take a watch and wait. But again, you've got to stay here. Obviously, just stay flat in the bed. And they're transfusing unit after unit of blood at
Mm.
that point. And my poor arm, I remember it going into my left arm, and they must have just understandably had the valve turned all the way up to like really let that blood go in quickly. Because I do remember kind of watching the bags thinking, oh my gosh, they're hanging another bag. So I knew I
Mm.
was going through it quickly. And they're taking my blood draw every day and checking my hematocrit, among other things. And that was the measurement that was showing them that I was bleeding out. I mean, they just could not transfuse quickly enough. And I can still see my abdomen going up and up and up. And I look like I'm about 5 or 6 months pregnant by now, which is
Yeah, because of the
really,
blood.
yes, which is really freaking me out. And it's just so ironic, because I had not been looking pregnant, and now I'm looking incredibly pregnant right when I'm thinking in my mind, am I losing the baby?
Mm.
As a result of all this. So it was kind of like a cruel, mind trick at that point, to just see my belly getting bigger and bigger. So after about 3 days of this, the OB just, looked me straight in the eye and he said, "We've really got to do surgery." And I said, "Yeah, I know, I understand." So we planned surgery for the next morning, and we agreed it was going to be he and another OBGYN physician. And I really trusted the hospital I was in. I was very comfortable there. I delivered my daughter there. I'd been there for many other things over the years. And I knew they were a great hospital for OBGYN, and I knew he was a great surgeon. Because he had been my surgeon for my 2 ectopic pregnancies. So I just really felt I was in good hands, because there was a little bit of discussion, should I be transferred downtown to the teaching hospital? And I'm like, no, do you think you can handle this? And they're like, we're doing everything we can. I said, I want to be here. I belong here. So we agreed to do the surgery the next morning. It's going to be my OB and one of his partners, who I also knew by reputation as a great surgeon. I thought, I'm in good hands. So what happens the night before the surgery, I have my dinner, and I'm just trying to relax because I am just so out of gas. I am just like utterly exhausted, and which just makes sense. And just really, really down. And I just think I just need to get some good sleep, to have as much energy as I can for tomorrow's surgery. And that's going to be, a good turnaround. And I'm trying to be positive. And what happens at the minute I try and really fall asleep, it was maybe around 8 p.m., 9 p.m. I'm scheduled for, the pre-op's going to start at 6:30 in the morning. And the minute I fall asleep and start to relax, I go out of my body and I wake up and I know I'm not dreaming, and I see myself float out of my body. And I now feel utterly fantastic for the first time since that began. And I'm just feeling so good, not only to be out of pain, but I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm the real me again. I'm like the full me. And I just had this sense of being my soul and my soul self, even though I wouldn't have ever thought about that before. And I remember looking back at my body and thinking, oh my gosh, look at her. She is whiter than the sheets. And also, look at her hair. Her hair's an absolute fright. Couldn't they have at least brushed her hair or washed her hair?
The things you think of.
The last thing on their minds. But I also noticed, I'm like, why am I referring to myself as she? And I really, I knew it was my body, but I didn't really care. And that concerned me a little bit that I was so disassociated from it. But I wanted to explore. And it was so great to just keep floating up. So I went quickly and easily out and up through the ceiling of the hospital room. And the minute I popped through that, I'm outdoors. And I do remember saying, oh, please don't make me walk through a long tunnel. That just sounds so exhausting. So I must have had some knowledge of NDEs at some level in my brain. I mean, I don't remember, really being interested, but I must have, seen that in a movie or heard that somewhere that people often went through a tunnel of light. And I'm like bargaining, oh, that is just too tiring. So the minute I thought that, this pristine escalator appears, and it just goes up and up and up. And it's just like so clean and so inviting and so magical. And I can see myself, and I'm like a beach ball. I'm just like this white ball of energy as a soul. And there's just like this energy, like a little lightning storm all sparking around. And I'm like, ooh, is that what souls look like? It was like a larger orb. But I could also see I was kind of like deflated. And I'm like, I don't look too good. So I just leaned on the railing of the escalator, and just because I didn't have any feet to stand, I guess I was being very literal about it. And I just kind of like lean on the escalator and go up and up and up. And I have no sense of time, but I just feel so good. and go on up. And I suddenly reached the light at the top of the escalator. I can just see this. And I'm like so excited. It's like, I made it home, heaven, the divine, whatever your belief system is. It's like, I'm there. But to me, it just looked like white light, this blinding, beautiful white light. And I want to rush into that and explore, but I can see right at the top of the escalator, there's a group of about 20 beings. And there were the angels that had been in my bathroom. There were all my grandparents. And I thought that was really neat because I knew my mom's parents well. I had been raised with my maternal grandparents, but I'd never met my dad's parents because they passed on before I was born. So that was really neat. And everyone's again like these white, beautiful soul form, like these amazing beach balls. But I know exactly who they are. And they just give me this huge group hug. And I just basked in it. I could have basked in that forever because I'm home and there's no pain. And it's like this reunion and this best ever welcome home party. And one of the angels addressed me and he said, welcome home. We're so glad you're here. You've done nothing wrong. And he told me, you can stay. You're very, very welcome to stay. And we will celebrate you and you can heal and etc. But if you choose to do that, if you take one more step here at home, and I'm feeling kind of like a little kid. I'm trying to jump and look over their shoulders because it felt like they were all taller and bigger than me. And I'm trying to see, what's behind door number 1. And I'm just trying to see that because I'm so drawn to it. But he's explaining very kindly, but very specifically, if you take one more step, you won't be able to go back to your body. And he was kind enough to share with me, if you do go back to your body, you will have a successful surgery tomorrow. And also your baby is going to be born healthy. Those were 2 huge pieces of information for me to know. Huge. I mean, that felt like such a gift. So there was no life review. A lot of people experience a life review, but I didn't have that. I got more the preview of coming attractions. I think we create what we need was the reason for that. So I'm listening to him, and then he adds one more piece of information, and he says, if you do go back, with that successful surgery and recovery, and with your baby being born healthy, you do need to know life is going to get very hard, and it's going to be hard likely for many years because you're not on your life path. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not fulfilling your purpose.
Hi, Kirsty here. Just a quick note to let you know that sometimes I go live with my guests either via YouTube or over via the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page. These sessions are interactive, and if you're part of them, you're able to ask questions, you're able to get some feedback, have discussion. And another added bonus is that if the guest has any particular giftings or abilities, quite often they're really happy to share those with the people that are on the call. These calls are done via YouTube, so the Kirsty Salisbury YouTube channel, or the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page. So if you want to get in on some of that fun and action, just pop on over to subscribe to get all of the updates. Now, back to our episode.
So, natural question, what am I supposed to be doing? And I tell him, I want to live my life purpose. I want to do the right thing. I'm 36 years old. What am I missing? What am I not doing? And he just gently shakes his head. And he's not going to tell me anything more. And I look around at the others and I thought, well, maybe someone else will give. Maybe someone else will give it up, or I'll be able to, sense it or intuit it. And they just got really playful, and they like zipped their lips and like threw the key away or put like duct tape over their mouths. They were just being playful. But no, they weren't going to tell me anything else. And I realized, okay, I need to be privileged to receive this information that I have received, be grateful for that. And I was really grateful too for the experience and for the choice, because I was given this respectful choice, stay or go. And I've read since then and, listened to many NDE accounts, and people feel they were forced back or shoved back into their body. And I didn't have that experience. It was a very respectful choice. So the whole group gave me one more huge group hug. That time I caught on. It wasn't just that beautiful unconditional love, because we so seldom experience that. It wasn't only that, it was energy. They were giving me energy that I believe is the reason that I survived the surgery, and then I'm able to recover and I'm able to deliver my daughter at full term. So I just thank them. I go back down this long escalator and just really gently float back in my body, and the next day have the surgery. So it's then a couple days in the hospital to rehabilitate the best I can from that, and then home for 6 weeks of essentially bed rest, close to bed rest, do just as little as possible. And the doctor explained to me that they estimated I had lost about 3/4 of my blood supply. And that they just had not been able to infuse, that much back in. I just couldn't take it in fast enough. And that's why I was just at times like howling with pain, because my left arm hurt so much from the blood being transfused. Because it just, it was just at such a high rate that they were, trying to get it in. So I do go home. I do recover. I go back to work. After the 6 weeks, I went back part-time the first week, and I went back full-time. And it was a job I loved. I'd been there for about 3 years, just glowing performance reviews. Everyone was very kind. And then, wham, about 6 weeks after I'm back at work, the hammer falls, and I'm laid off. And it just really came out of the blue. And I remembered the angel saying, things are about to get really hard. And I thought, oh, wow, thanks for the warning. I didn't know what you meant. I mean, there's no way I could have prepared for it. It just, it is what it is. And it was a double hit, because it's not just my income, which we really, counted on. We were two income household. I carried the health insurance for the family. So I'm now pregnant, no health insurance for me, no health insurance for the delivery, no health insurance for my daughter, who, needs regular pediatrician visits, and no insurance for my husband in case he needed anything. So it's like, oh my goodness. Well, this is interesting. Yeah. So I'm reeling from that. I file for unemployment. I'm trying to job search, but I am not in a good headspace for it. And I'm still pretty sick, still pretty weak, still experiencing I really need to recover more. So that turned out to be one of the blessings in disguise, but it sure didn't feel like it at the moment. And then 1 week later to the day, so this was, both events happened in November of 97. 1 week later to the day, my husband comes in from work, and I had never seen him look so dejected. I mean, his shoulders were like down to his knees, and his footsteps were just like so heavy coming in the front door, and he was really late coming home from work. And I just looked at him and said, "Are you okay? What's going on? What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, I'm sorry to say we just had to do a massive layoff at work today and make some really hard decisions," because he owned his own software company with 4 partners. So I had no idea things were, that touch and go for them. I thought they were doing well. We had agreed and we'd purchased a new home just the previous June. We'd purchased a new minivan. I really didn't realize how quickly it could all fall away. And he lets me know we've just gone to payless paydays. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, what does that mean? I don't even know that term, but it doesn't sound good. What does that mean? And he explains, well, we have contracts to fulfill and we've got to, keep our reputation and we've got to try and sell the company, but I'm going to be going to work full time. In fact, I'm going to be working probably 80 to 100 hours a week because we've laid off so many people. And we've got to fill these contracts. But I will not be getting paid for it. And my jaw is now like on the floor. I'm like, What? That's the decision you're making? No discussion, no conversation? And he's like, we've already made the decision. And I'm like, oh boy. So that was a really tough one. So we had words about that. And I also said, well, okay, clearly you feel very passionately about this. Have you at least filed for unemployment? I realize everything just literally came to a head today. Have you filed for unemployment? And he said, no, I'm not able to do that because we didn't pay the premiums because they were too expensive because we're self-employed. There will be no unemployment. And obviously there was not going to be any possibility of getting health care through his company either, because that was something that I was just starting to explore. Okay, since we can't have it through my company, since I'm no longer there, can we get it through his company? So that's gone too. And I'm like, wow, that angel, he really told me like it was. So we were just really in a tough spot. So it's like, okay, so we agreed he's going to go off to work, try and sell the company, try and fill these contracts, get things done. I'm at home. We've got our nanny who's on a contract. She's from out of the country. We can't let her go. It just wasn't morally right, nor could we legally just, dismiss her. So she's still living with us. And again, that was a blessing in disguise because I'm thinking, gosh, how do we pay her? But I really needed the physical help. So it was good that she was there because I've got this, wonderful, very active toddler. And I just put my nose to the grindstone of, okay, I've got to figure out the finances for the family and just deal with reality. So I contact both the bank, the lender for our home, and for the minivan, the new minivan. And I think, okay, I just need to be honest and let them know we both are moving into new positions, was the way I put it. And they both, instead of agreeing to partial payments or any sort of negotiation that I thought I'd be able to work out, the bank instead said, thanks for the heads up. We're starting foreclosure immediately. And I'm like, wow, we haven't even missed a payment and you're now going to start foreclosure. So much for being honest. Minivan, very similar thing. They said, okay, we're going to start, as soon as you miss a payment, we're going to repossess. So it's like, wow, it's just like, I just felt like I was being squeezed to death. And again, I'm just trying to get healthy. I'm trying to look for a job. I'm just trying to keep the family finances together. And we've cut every expense we can. We're doing everything we can reasonable. I'm like, okay, can I maybe work part-time? Seemed like a good solution, but just nothing was coming up. And so we had to go to what I lovingly refer to as Bank of Mom. Because we were going through our savings rapidly, and we also were maxing out our credit cards. And we knew we weren't going to be able to get a loan. We weren't going to be able to get new credit cards or get increases on them because we were both out of work. Call a spade a spade. So Bank of Mom, my mother, so kindly, she sacrificed and she really didn't hesitate. And she's like, how much do you need? And I said, can we just take it on a month-by-month basis? I am squeezing every penny I can out of this. And we just, wrote a note with her, and then just did the bookkeeping of how much we would owe her when we were both back to work, to start to pay that back. So,
wow.
And I'm still in a very high-risk pregnancy because the doctors are questioning, is the uterine repair going to hold, or is that fundus going to rupture again? Because of course you go through such incredible growth, through your pregnancy. And I'm not huge. It's like I was 5'2", 135 pounds when I got pregnant. So it's, it's like all belly. It's just, I gained 32 pounds with my first child and 30 pounds with my second. So there's like a lot of pressure going on there. But I did successfully go to 39 weeks, and we opted to deliver, induced delivery early 1 week. Just because they were afraid the baby was getting too big to deliver vaginally. And that ended up being a blessing too. Oh, and I was able to get insurance along the way. An angel helped me with that too. And this was the craziest thing. I'm sitting in the pediatrician office, and you know how when you've got a really little one, you're just trying to keep them quiet and busy and happy in the waiting room. They're just like bouncing off the walls usually. But I could hear an angel say, look. And I'm like, look at what? And I'm looking, my child is fine. And I'm looking around the waiting room, and I see this flyer. I see this pamphlet on a side table in the pediatrician's waiting room. And I'm like, what is that? It says WIC. And I'm like, what is WIC? I have no idea what this program is. And it's Women, Infants, and Children program. And it provided free health insurance for women and children if they financially could not afford it. And it did not require us to give up our home.
Oh, wonderful.
So that was just suddenly we had health insurance again, at least for me and the baby for the delivery and for my daughter. It did not include my husband, but it's like, okay, at least we've got the biggest needs covered. So we go to deliver, and again, it literally was just that angelic voice, but it was like really firm, and it's this lovely male voice of pay attention, look. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking, show me what I'm looking at. And I just pulled up that pamphlet and just did the paperwork and got qualified. So that was a wonderful blessing. So at 39 weeks, I go in to deliver at my community hospital where I had the previous delivery, where I'd had the near-death experience and the surgery, where I'd had the ectopic pregnancies. And they were just a wonderful hospital for maternity care. They did approximately 5,000 births a year. So, very experienced. And that's why I felt comfortable, because again, it was, do I go downtown? Or do I go to my own OB in my own hospital? And we agreed I could deliver there with one extra addition. They gave me my own nurse for the whole day. I mean, she was they just staffed up. And that was a beautiful gift too. And I did not expect that or think any hospital would do that. But they were concerned enough about what could happen in the delivery. And they said, we're going to have a nurse in there with you. And because you're being induced, we know what day we need to add somebody to the schedule. So that worked out really well. And the birth, fortunately, went well and was easier than my first daughter's birth. And I had a healthy baby girl.
Wow, congratulations. I know it's a while ago now, but I feel like I'm right there in the moment, like I'm reliving your experience. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Wendy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that baby is now finishing her engineering degree in college.
Yeah, so it hasn't just happened at all. I'm just so in the moment. I have so many questions. I want to backtrack. My first question was, was she okay? Did the the delivery go well? So you've covered that, which is wonderful to hear. The angels, the angelic experiences that you've had, so you've had a couple of them there. The main one being when you're on the floor in the bathroom right at the beginning, before the bleeding came, said to get some help. You said that you saw the angels after you went through the elevator. I loved how you didn't want to walk. That's a whole nother question that I've got aside for that.
Right.
But you went through the elevator.
Instead.
Escalator, yep. You get there, you were this beautiful, you said a beach ball of light, this white orby type of light with little lights going through it. And that just sounds wonderful. You said you saw the angels that were with you in the bathroom. What did they look like? They weren't white balls of light.
Everyone looked the same, but I just knew. I knew some were angels. I knew some were my mom's parents. I knew some were my dad's parents. I just recognized some of the people. It's like you just know who they are, but it also had that beautiful message of everyone is exactly the same. So all these artificial divisions that we create around gender and age and cultures and nationality, they don't mean a danged thing. So that was very clear to me, with, all these beautiful souls looking exactly the same.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I love it. I hear this all the time as well about how we are all connected, we are all one, we are all exactly the same and yet so uniquely different. So that just really reinforces that concept. When you saw them in your bathroom, what were they like? Were they like the orbs of light? I've heard stories of all sorts of different visuals.
They weren't orbs then. It just was like the whole bathroom was flooded with this huge amount of light. And I knew and sensed and could feel it was like rays. It was like rays of the sun, only a million times more beautiful. And I didn't see different physical forms at that time. But I just sensed and I knew. And then when I heard the voice, it's like, that's an angel talking to me. Oh my goodness, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Then I want to go back to the question that we nearly touched on. You're going through the elevator. You said that you felt amazing. You popped out of your body. You felt incredible and almost disassociated too. You looked down and you're referring to she and her, which was yourself, your body on the bed. As you went on, you said that you felt tired. You felt a bit lethargic. And yet you were this orb of light. And, oh, please don't make me walk like that. I just love that. So what do you think the tiredness was? Was that because of, were you still connected to your body? Your body was struggling, I think so you were struggling? I
think I was still holding on to that human experience because I had just popped out of the body and I'm still attached to it at some level, clearly, because I was able to go back to it. So I think I was still, I hadn't gotten home yet. I hadn't healed at home yet. I hadn't been infused with that energy and that love and that wisdom that I would get at home. I think that was that exhaustion that was still there. It's like I was a gas tank and I was just so many quarts empty. Quite literally, quarts empty of blood.
Yeah, exactly. I always wonder whether we will have people talk about how they feel so light and free and so not of this world, but yet still part of this world. I wonder whether we go through a whole nother level, and we can't answer this because the near-death experience that comes back. But I wonder if there's another level that when we actually do die and we don't come back, that there's another amount of release or lightness or something that happens when we cross that border as well. And I find it really interesting. You got so close to that border and yet you chose to come back.
Absolutely. It was the easiest decision, honestly, because what I said was, I'm going back for my children. It just, that just burst out of me. And it didn't matter if that baby was going to make it or not. I was going back for my daughter. I was going back for my toddler. They're just, the minute they asked me the question, do you want to go back? I just could see her adorable little face and, her curly little brown hair. And it's like, oh, this is really not a question at all. I'm going back for my children. And I did believe the angel because he said that the baby would be born healthy too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know. I think I'd really struggle to make that decision. But I think, like you're talking, that maternal instinct kicks in, that mothering, that connection that you have with your children just sounds like that kicked in fully. You had
Absolutely. Well, it can
no
be one of
doubts, no
the
questions.
it can be one of the main reasons we're here is that contract, that soul contract with our children,
Yeah.
that we're fortunate to be chosen by them, and that we agree to become the parent. And also, just because I had years of infertility and because I'd had 2 ectopic pregnancies, I didn't come to motherhood easily. I mean, just like you were told no, and I had been told it could be a really tough journey because I've got severe scoliosis and I've got a 14-inch metal rod in my spine. So I couldn't have an epidural. I was told, and the nurses were kind of like, "Oh, wow, we haven't seen one of these in eons." I'm like, well,
Yeah.
here I am. We're going to figure it out. And it's just, I just took a little bit of Demerol was all that we were able to do for
Boy.
a little bit of pain relief.
Yeah. Gee, I take my hat off to you because it is extremely painful. So the fact that the fact that it was a difficult journey for you to become a mother in the first place, and yet that's the thing that you came back for, that's part of this purpose that you felt. Why do you think we have these barriers, or we have this resistance for the thing which is our purpose, or the thing which is right in front of us that we need to do? Any
That's a
insights?
fantastic question. I think because the journey is really about the journey itself, and at times the struggle. It's not about the destination. I mean, it does no good to say, well, I'm going to be happy when. I choose to be happy now. I choose to be happy and healthy every day. That's my conscious choice. And I think that there's so much value in that thrashing about. And just the difficulties that we can have. I wish I could say that I became this fantastic, different, enlightened person after those 2 experiences, those 2 near-death experiences in August of '97, but I didn't. There were years more of really tough times until I finally felt I'm on my life path now. It took until 2010. So it was another, significant number of years. It was another 13 years because I was frankly so flat out crazy busy for years because I'm working full time. I've got 2 children that were born 26 months apart. My husband works full time. We both had some business travel. Life was just really, really crazy and chaotic. So I didn't really start to, see the positive changes until 2010. And by then I was divorced. We divorced in 2005. Because that was another tough thing that happened. I hadn't been home more than a day or 2 with this, precious newborn, and I'm feeding her, and my husband's at work, and I just heard a clear voice say, "Your contract with your husband is done." And I'm like, oh dear, what does that mean? But I didn't know the concept of soul contracts. And I just knew that it just felt very complete. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't tell me we've just had these 2 beautiful little children and we're now going to put them through a divorce. So that was just anathema to me. I was just really, we tried everything we could. I give us both a lot of credit. We tried everything we could to be great parents, to be kind to one another, to be peaceful, but we were not meant to be together. And we did divorce when the children were 6 and 8 because we thought they're both in school full time. And we'll find a way to do a very respectful, make it as easy for the kids as possible, where they'll go back and forth between both homes. So we did a 50-50 residential schedule. And that takes a lot of energy and trust with someone that you're divorcing.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But we did it.
Wow.
We did.
Wow. You said that you weren't meant to be together. Was that from that time forward, or were you meant to be together in the beginning? Do you think that the contract was to start that way?
I feel we had a contract to, I literally meditated years later and I said, what was my contract with my former husband? And it was pretty straightforward. It was to have a long-term marriage that we would both really grow from, and to have beautiful children, plural. So how interesting that literally my daughter, my youngest, is a day old when I'm hearing your contract's complete, you're finished with your husband. And I'm like, what? But I heard it.
So why would that happen if your contract was to have a long-term marriage with children? Why would it suddenly stop?
I think that was the end of the contract. I think it's just that simple. The long term. It was just that was the long term, and we'd had the beautiful children, plural. I just didn't know it was going to be when she was one day old that I was going to feel this, oh my gosh, we're done. And of course, I don't say this to him. It's like, oh my goodness, what do you do with that kind of information? So, just tried to focus on the family and to be the best wife that I could, and just, tried to do what I was meant to do. But, once we divorced, and just agreeing that we would be very peaceful, agreeing that we'd be respectful, agreeing that we would never say anything against the other parent to our children, and that we would do everything we could. We grew a lot through that experience. And we grew a lot through the co-parenting, because you're now doing long haul trucking because you've got children that are only 6 and 8, and you've got to, parent together, hopefully co-parent until they're into college or through college. So you're always their parents.
Yeah, exactly. So that relationship actually stays for a lot longer than the marriage.
Absolutely.
The relationship continues.
We still do every major holiday together. We still do family birthdays together. We chose not to make the kids choose. We didn't want the children to be pawns. And we also didn't think it was fair to have one parent be excluded and not to see them, on those important days. So we just sucked it up. Was it easy in the beginning? No. I was really angry. I was really frustrated. Sure. I'd go scream on the back porch or in the bathroom where no one could hear me. I'd go, and I would say to the kids sometimes, excuse me, I have to give myself a mom timeout. And I would just
I'll be right back.
So, hopefully, they learn some skills from that too, that sometimes that's better than, speaking out in anger at the moment or whatever. You've got to have some self-control, but admit you're human too. And sometimes you're truly aggravated because guess what? Dad's supposed to pick him up at a certain time and he's 2 hours late, because he gets caught in a meeting and then traffic is bad. And there went my evening I'd planned and really looked forward to with my girlfriend. That would make me angry, So I learned to, not plan things right at pickup.
Exactly. I'm sure that there was so much you went through as you were talking. My heart, I'm just really feeling it for you. I'm like, oh, this must have been so difficult. So you're going through, I'm going to say a marriage breakup, I suppose. I know it was over time.
Yes.
You've lost your job. He's had to go into a very difficult, work situation. Was there a point when you sort of sat back and thought, why did I come back? It would have been easier to stay.
I did reach that point, and interestingly, I didn't reach it until 2013 and 2014. I started what I would call waking up spiritually through reading Journey of Souls, Dr. Michael Newton's classic, yes. And by having my own first past life regression. And what led to that was, it was about 5 or 6 years after the divorce. And I'd rebuilt my life. I had a great job. My daughters were doing well. We'd built a new home. My mom moved from out of state the moment that she knew we were divorcing. She had retired, and I'm the only child. They were the only grandkids. So she moved across the country and came and joined us. And that grandma glue was just essential, because you've got 2 parents working full time and kids going back and forth. So she helped with transportation, and she helped with so many things. So very, very grateful to her for the many roles she played. But in 2010, what happened was I decided, hey, everything is going well. I'm ready to meet a nice guy. I was divorced in 2005. Okay, where do you meet a nice guy? So I asked my younger girlfriends, because I haven't been on a date in 25 years. I have no clue. I just have no clue. And they're like, Wendy, it's very simple. You go on Match.com. I'm like, what's Match.com? And they're like, oh, it's an online dating thingy. And we'll help you put together, you pick out some photos, and, you just talk about yourself a little bit, and you meet someone, and just be sensible with your geography. Meet someone you're busy, meet someone who lives and works near you. It's like, okay, this all sounds great. So I met the soulmate that had the soul contract to wake me up spiritually via Match.com, which I think is just hysterically funny. I think that is one of the funniest stories of my life, because who would expect that? No one. Match does not list this as a benefit,
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I find that hilarious. I love that. So for our listeners who might not understand what that means, you're waking up the soul contract. Yes. Can you expand a little bit more about what happened, other than going out on a date, I presume?
Right. So it takes us about 3 weeks to meet. But what he had written at the end of his little profile description of himself was he would love to meet a woman on a spiritual journey, particularly one interested in an LBL. And I'm scratching my head, what's an LBL? So I Google it, because I'm not writing to somebody when I don't know what the abbreviations are, just in case it's some weird drug reference I don't want to get involved with. Trying to be sensible. But when I looked up LBL, I found Life Between Lives, which was Dr. Michael Newton's 4-hour spiritual regression, where you pass on home and you're in your pure soul form. So I write right back to him and say, I wouldn't consider myself on a spiritual journey. I have to be honest. But what you said so intrigues me, is LBL, Dr. Newton's Life Between Lives. And he said, yes, do you know about it? I'm going to have one in about a month. I've had one before, and I'm so excited to go for my second one. And I said, well, does that correlate to the book Journey of Souls? And he said, yes. Have you read it? I said, no, but I just ordered it from the library. I'm waiting for it to get here. So it then takes us 3 weeks to sync up schedules because of business travel and things. And that, again, was perfect, because I'd read the book by then. And the minute I saw him, we agreed to meet for lunch at a nice restaurant, and I'm sitting on the bench in the foyer of the restaurant, and he walks in, and all I can hear is, I know him, I know him, I know him. I couldn't stand up. I had never had that happen before. And he came right over to me. I mean, yes, we've seen each other's pictures, but people don't always post the most accurate recent pictures, shall we say. And plus, pictures don't show you, height and weight at all either. You've got like this little head, little face. Yep. But he came over and he said, Wendy? And I said, yes. And I still couldn't stand up. He dropped down on his knee in front of me and looked into my eyes and said, I know you. So that lunch lasted 3 hours, because we're continuing to try and figure out where we know each other from. We know each other from previous lifetimes.
Yeah.
And that was just
Wow.
mind-blowing to me. And it wouldn't have fit my belief system before reading Journey of Souls. But I was just at the point where I was ready to like crack open like an egg. And this was kind of the chisel that was applied to me for me to start to realize we don't have just this one lifetime, and we can make agreements with people. We can make these soul agreements or soul contracts before we incarnate that we're going to meet up and recognize each other and have whatever experience. So we found 19 lives together, and it was a lot of work to work through them all. So much of it was wonderful. Wouldn't trade it for the world. I'll always be grateful for that relationship. But it was also the most intense, crazy, difficult, challenging relationship I've ever had in my life. So we dated, and he ended it at about 13 months, and I couldn't move. I just couldn't function. I'm like, that wasn't supposed to happen. I don't understand. So I'm literally like dragging myself to work every day, doing my best to focus and doing my best to make dinner for the kids and make sure they've got what they need. But I'm like not there. So it was a tough recovery, but it was good. The blessing was it put me on the path of, why did this happen? What was this, meant to be? What am I meant to learn? How do I rebuild on higher ground? Because I refuse to just have something happen to me. I'm going to grow through it, not just go through it. That's always been my philosophy, and I've got enough backbone. I'm going to grow through it.
Yeah. And I'm hearing that time and time again. You're talking about the storm, and you said it's about the journey. It's not about getting there. It's about being bashed about and the learning process. So I'm hearing that same message. I don't know whether you're aware that you're saying it, but you've weaved it in through our conversation time and time again, which I find so interesting.
Yes.
Because we can get a very simplistic perception or idea of something, but actually we need to go through so many things and go through the hardship and go through the tough times and go through the learning process. Because one thing I've learned after doing many, many of these interviews is so much of it is about learning and the growth and having the experience to be able to go to either the next level or to have a bigger understanding or to be able to be of more service in some way. And that's exactly what you've been saying. I can just see
absolutely. Yeah. There's a beautiful quote about when you can shift, why is this happening to me, to why is this happening for me? You move out of that victim place, you move out of that martyrdom place. Because guess what? The divorce doesn't feel good. The job losses don't feel good. The car collision doesn't feel good. And I went through all of them. And each time it was like, okay, how do I regroup and how do I level up? How do we just keep moving up from this? Because it's for a reason.
Exactly. So I want to go back a little bit to your near-death experience. I'm very aware you said that you came up, you could look down on your body. You didn't necessarily connect with her or she, but you understood that that was you. That's where you had lived for some time in that body. You had the sense that you got told that you hadn't completed your purpose, that you were off track.
Yes.
Do you think that's the reason that all of this happened?
It may well be. I think that's a really good question. I don't have great clarity on that. That certainly would make great sense, Kirsty. And I do know that the divorce, as difficult as it was to go through that process and to then co-parent, it needed to happen for me to get to that boyfriend and get to that partner where I was going to wake up spiritually. And another contract I had with him was he was going to break my heart repeatedly until I stood in my power fully without abusing it. That is a brilliant contract. And that's what got me on my life path, was the combination of those. And then the circumstances just started flowing in, because he found the hypnotherapist for me to go and have my first past life regression. And 1 year later, I have my own life between lives. And things are suddenly starting to make sense. And I train as a Reiki master, and I train as a past life regressionist, and I get published. I had a incredible blockage around writing. So guess what? The boyfriend I meet, he's an amazing writer. He was an investigative journalist. He's writing a book. He's written plays. So isn't this the perfect person for me to just be, bouncing this all off? Because I knew it was part of my purpose that I was supposed to be writing and publishing books. You should have heard that conversation with the guides. I'm like, can I write a short story? It's similar perhaps to you, Kirsty, and you're bargaining regarding you don't want to do this podcast.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm not going to find anyone. There's not going to be anyone no one will be willing to talk to me. So I'm like, how about if I do a short story? They're like, no, we said book. I'm like, well, there's novellas and novelettes. Like arguing.
Yeah. I'm so relating to what you're saying right now.
Because I'm like, come on,
trying to get out the hard part. Yeah.
I've never done this before. I have no training as a writer. I'm super busy. I'm working full time. I've got children, a home, pets, a yard. How the heck do you think I'm supposed to do this? So I'm wasting so much energy in arguing rather than saying, show me the way. Please help me. Please help this happen, would have been much more reasonable responses. Yeah. But I didn't.
I come back there though. Yeah.
Right.
I think we come back round, like we learn that we're going to go on that really hard, like trying to get out of it, trying to not let it happen, but we know we're going to end up doing it anyway. And I think that journey gets shorter and shorter between things that we know we need to do, but we're kind of resisting, to the point where we're like, okay, let's just get on with it. Yeah.
So what I finally started writing was I wrote the transcript of my life between lives. I had written some notes about the past life regression, and I was kind of shocked because more and more details kept filling in regarding those past lives. And at first, and I'm glad I got educated about it because I didn't know that often happens. So, but at first I was kind of blocking it. I'm like, oh, I'm just being imaginative or fanciful. This isn't real, because it didn't happen in the confines of that 2-hour past life regression. But I listened to the recording again, and the hypnotherapist said, just write it down and be open to more information may flow to you naturally. Well, it's really just that simple, so that the dream comes, or you meet someone and, more bits and pieces of it fill in. So that's what I actually started writing, because I just had to organize all these experiences. And I had so much emotion to purge, because that breakup with the boyfriend, even though it was a shorter relationship, there was just such intensity and such, backstory to it and such history to it, that I needed to get that on paper. I wrote over the next maybe 2 years, 1,200 pages. This is the woman who didn't have time to write. But what I would do was I would write 1 hour a day, either very early in the morning before work, or if it was quiet enough at work at lunchtime, with my own laptop at work, to be, obviously respectful of your work relationship. Or what got to be a sweet spot was the girls had gotten old enough. They were pretty self-directed with their homework. So they're doing homework for hours quietly in the evening. And I'm like, I can sit here and write. So that's when it started. A lot of it started to flow out. But I wrote fiction. I was writing the experiences as fiction, and I didn't know how to structure it. And it was so huge. And I didn't know what to do with it, because I was starting so many different books, and I didn't know how to pull the thread between them. I didn't have an editor. I just didn't know where to go with it. But I'm like, that's okay. It'll make sense at some point. And if it's just for me, I'm absolutely fine with that, because I sure don't want to share this publicly. So my guide stepped in, because again, I'm supposed to be writing, but sharing it. And they step in, and I end up doing a past life regression session for my former boyfriend. And because we had reconciled as friends, and I had never been able to do that before, but it was really important that we do that because we had a lot more of those lives to sort through, and we just kept finding them. And so we became spiritual seekers together in many, many ways, and just shared those experiences. And what I offered him a session because he had some pretty significant physical pain. He had broken his neck, and he'd played professional sports and a high contact sport for decades. And he'd had several car accidents. So he's got a lot of neck pain, shoulder pain, upper back pain. And I said, would you like to do a session with me? Because I knew he'd had several past life regressions. He'd done 2 life between lives. And he said, yes, that's really kind of you. I would love to. But you need to know I'm a really bad subject. I don't meditate. I'm antsy. I don't stay there. I pop out of it. I said, that's okay. My guides are saying to offer you a session. Don't let me talk you into it. You have to be comfortable. Are you okay doing this with your ex-girlfriend? Because it's a pretty darn personal thing to be speaking as your soul. But his guides were coming to me, and I did not want to be the intermediary. I was like, you need to connect with your guides, buddy. That's not my job. I'm not your psychic medium. Talk to your father, will you? Your father's right here. Your grandmother's right here. He's like, what? I don't get it. I don't know how to talk to them. So we agreed to do the session. And a day or 2 before the session, my guide said, this is going to be the most difficult session you've ever done. I'm like, oh, great. Thanks for the warning. Don't you love those messages? And I said, okay, do you still want me to do it? Is it for my highest and holiest? Is it for his highest and holiest? Is there anything I need to know? And be aware, I will be sharing this information with him because, again, he needs to opt in again to have this info come up. And my guide said, all you need to know is you should double record. Use 2 devices to record because there may be a lot of energy that may knock out the recording device. So I'm like, okay. Sure, I can do that. So I have an MP3 recorder, and I use my fancy dancy new iPhone at the time. And I'm like, oh, look at this. It's got a record button on it. This is years ago. I barely know how to use the technology. So he said, yes, he still wanted to do the session. It's like, great. So we did the session, and it was 4.5 hours. And I said to him at the end of it, how long do you think we were working together? How long were, and he says, oh, that went way longer than I thought. I thought it'd be like an hour because I'm not a great subject, but I think it was 2 hours. That was really long. I was like, look at the clock, 4.5 hours. Yeah. So that tells me there's 2.5 hours of information he does not know. From his subconscious, from his superconscious, because he was channeling his guides. He learned how to connect with his guides. He met his higher self for the first time. I mean, it was just amazing, as well as going through these past lives. So I'm all excited, and I go to transfer the recording onto his computer from my MP3 recorder. There's nothing there. It's blank.
Oh, I keep hearing this. Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, my God. There's nothing there. There's no way I can share this information with him. Or is it appropriate? He needs to hear his own voice. He needs to. And so I press the play button on my phone, and I'm just like praying, please let the recording be there. Well, it is. It's mysteriously on my iPhone, clear as a bell. But I can't get it off the phone because this is 4.5 hour recording. So I'm like, okay, don't break a sweat, Wendy. Go to the phone store the next day and have them move it for you. They're tech wizards. They'll know what to do. And they look at it and they're like, how'd you get a 4.5 hour recording on here? This won't record that long. That's not possible. I was just thinking that. Were you at a concert or something? I'm like, no, it's a client session. We can't be playing this publicly in the store. And they're like, oh yeah, we hear you and a man talking. It sounds like a therapy session. I said, that's what it is. How do I get it off my phone and send it to his computer? They're like, we can't. I'm like, oh, brother, what do I do now? Because I can't give up my phone to him. Yeah. And we didn't want to take 4.5 hours to sit there and listen to it together. It was private.
Yeah.
So I'm really struggling. What do I do? So I pray about it and sleep on it for the night. And in the morning, my guide said, you need to type up just a really simple, don't worry about typos, really simple transcript, just his name, your name, back and forth, really simple transcript, and email it to him. I'm like, oh, brother, that's a big task.
4.5 hours.
Right, right. And they didn't have transcription services then like they do now. You know, you can send them off and get that done quite affordably. So I sat down and I must have typed for about 2 hours on a Saturday. And then it's like, oh, I got to take a break. I got to stretch and move. And when I came back and looked at it, Kirsty, I almost fell out of my chair because it had the title of the book. It had my name as the author, had the table of contents, and I'd written notes to myself, like to include a forgiveness resource guide at the end of the book. And I'm like, you're a book. Oh my gosh, you're a book. And I had no conscious knowledge it was flowing out of me that way. But I think because I was so blocked as a writer, that I think that's why my guides interceded in a lovely way and just kind of made this happen. So I contact him and say, there's something crazy going on here, and it's a book. Can I blind your identity and you read it and make sure, you know, we can change any details you're not comfortable with? Because sessions are very personal. And if he wanted to blind identity of, you know, family and friends that were mentioned in it, that sort of thing. And he said, oh my gosh, finally, I keep hearing my guides and they keep saying, help Wendy write her first book. You're supposed to help her write her book. Yeah. Will you help that woman birth a book? My God, she's slow. My God, she's stubborn.
Yeah.
He's like, thank you.
Isn't that amazing?
I'd be happy to help you do that. I'm supposed to help you write your book. And he's like, use my session. Use my session. Go ahead. So I did. And that's how the first book came out as nonfiction. And I discovered the nonfiction and writing the most amazing client sessions was much easier for me than writing fiction, where I, you know, needed more characters and had to know how to do plotting and, you know, just needed more skills that I hadn't had time to learn or build at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where that book came from, off my iPhone with the store going, you can't record that long on an iPhone.
Well, that was my first thought was, how did you manage that? Because I know that I run out of
Spirit did that.
Yeah,
Spirit did that.
Exactly.
When
we need things to be done, they happen.
There was nothing else recorded on it. I didn't have a concept that it wasn't possible, nor did he. And I think it was important that we didn't know that wasn't possible.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that. Wendy, I know I want to get you back on at some point because you're doing some amazing work. You've got some amazing, interesting, fascinating stories. And I'd love for some of our listeners, they want to go deeper into the past life regression, into the life between lives. The two books that you've mentioned, they are significant to me, both of them, in my own spiritual journey. They are definitely part of the stepping stone to get to where I am sitting here chatting to you today.
Well, I'd love to come back. You're so, so kind.
In terms of everything we've talked about today, your near-death experiences, your angelic experiences, everything that's happened from that point, what is your one key message that you want our listeners to hear?
My key message is just do your best to be kind, because we can't know what other people's journey is. No. And there's just so much judgment. So just do your best to be kind and do your best to find your life purpose and get on your life path, because oh my goodness, I love helping people do that. I always do that in session. That's a question we always ask is, may I know my life purpose and life path at this time? Because sometimes you're meant to know it and sometimes you're not yet meant to know it. But just trust that people are doing what they're meant to be doing. So just be kind. It's not our role to judge.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Love it. It's amazing how that just keeps coming round and round and round. Wendy, we're going to put your links in there. If people are looking to find out their purpose, they can have a session with you. There is so much that I want to just digest out of our conversation today. I know there's more conversation to come. So, Wendy Rose Williams, thank you so much. We have really appreciated you sharing this with us today.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate you creating this format and having the podcast, and for your wonderful energy and the services that you provide. So thank you, Kirsty.
Oh, wonderful. Until next time, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Don't forget you can join the free online community over at www.letstalkneardeath.com, and I look forward to sharing another episode with you soon.